It's just as John Major dreamed it would be. It's just what Brian Mawhinney promised him. 100 Labour MPs stuck on the opposition benches after the election. What they hadn't quite bargained for was another 319 Labour MPs overflowing from the government benches. So how did they get it so wrong? And without the Michaels, Heseltine and Portillo, how can they get it right? Find out after a week in politics, after the Channel 4 News with Kathy Smith.
Good evening. Former Deputy Prime Minister Michael Heseltine has said he will not be standing for the Conservative Party leadership after being taken ill. He's been admitted to hospital suffering from angina. 4 years ago, he suffered a heart attack while holidaying in Italy. And in between relaxing in the Downing Street garden, Tony Blair has been announcing who'll make up the rest of his government. The former Deputy Prime Minister Michael Heseltine has ruled himself out of the Tory leadership contest. The announcement came shortly after he was admitted to hospital suffering mild angina pains. Peter Morgan of our political unit reports.
Michael Heseltine arriving at the Henley Count on Thursday night, the last stop in an exhausting 6-week campaign. The former Deputy Prime Minister was seen as the most likely man to succeed John Major, at least in the short term, but news of his admission to hospital today has ended such speculation. Mr Heseltine, who had a mild heart attack 4 years ago, was admitted to a Banbury hospital with angina pains. He's expected to remain there until midweek for further tests. Many of Mr Heseltine's political allies lost their seats on Thursday night, but when he was asked about the leadership contest yesterday, he still appeared keen to fight.
Do you have any leadership ambitions yourself, Mr Heseltine?
All these matters will be resolved by the party. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
But tonight's announcement effectively marks the end of Michael Heseltine's political ambitions. The man who's had his eyes on Downing Street since student days may not have reached his final goal, but at key moments he's had a decisive influence on the modern Conservative Party. A charismatic and at times controversial Commons performer, Mr Heseltine's political and personal differences with Mrs Thatcher came to a head over Westland in 1986. Mr Heseltine resigned and 4 years later challenged Mrs Thatcher for the leadership. He lost but became John Major's main confidant, a relationship which endured through this year's election campaign as it had done in the 1995 leadership contest when he marshalled support for John Major. Friends say he's made a sensible decision.
That I never expected him to be a candidate for the leadership of the Tory party for the pretty obvious reason that the size of the Labour Party's majority is such that it'll take at least 2 elections in order to get them out.
Mr Heseltine's decision leaves a critical gap at the top of the Tory party and makes the search for a compromise leader even more difficult. Tonight, Horton General Hospital said Mr Heseltine was in a comfortable condition. They'll make a further statement on his condition tomorrow afternoon.
Well, joining us now from Newbury is our political editor, Eleanor Goodman. Eleanor, how much of a political and a personal blow is this to Mr Heseltine?
Well, it's obviously a huge blow to the Tory party in the sense that they're already reeling. I was talking to one Conservative today and they were saying that reading the results of the election in detail today was like looking at the death lifts after the Battle of the Somme. They'd suddenly discovered that somebody else had gone. In that context, Michael Heseltine's illness is just another very serious blow. He'd obviously fought a very good campaign in the sense he'd been scrupulously loyal to John Major throughout. It wasn't entirely clear whether he would stand for the leadership, but this is certainly not the way he would have wanted to be ruled out, but the very fact that he was seen going into hospital would have ruled him out had he not said it himself, because it would have just reminded people that he was very much older than Tony Blair, and that was always going to be the difficult thing for him if he did stand.
So what are the implications now for the leadership contest?
Well, it obviously weakens the left, as does the announcement from Hong Kong that the governor there is not intending to try and get back into British politics and get a seat. So it focuses the attention of the left of the Tory party on Ken Clarke, who is an altogether more controversial figure, and Stephen Dorrell. And it probably helps the right insofar as in the last time Michael Heseltine did get some support from the right. Any other left-wing candidate won't. The problem is for the Tory party that really they are in such a state of shock. It's very difficult at the moment to say who exactly will stand. Any number of dark horses could yet emerge.
Eleanor, thank you very much indeed. In his second day as Prime Minister, Tony Blair has finished appointing his cabinet. Most of his new ministers kept their old portfolios from the shadow cabinet, but there were a few surprises, with Frank Dobson becoming Health Secretary and Donald Dewar going to the Scottish office. Our political correspondent Gary Gibbon reports.
Tony Blair spared a moment for the photographers, but spent the rest of his day in Downing Street, completing his cabinet appointments. In the last hour, they've been sworn in at Buckingham Palace. The team includes a record 5 women cabinet ministers. An early arrival this morning was Mo Mowlam, appointed Northern Ireland Secretary. Claire Short was made Secretary of State for International Development, with a place in the cabinet. Exactly the sweetener she was promised to stop her leaving the front bench last year, when Tony Blair demoted her from the transport brief.
I'm going to try and be good, I always do, but I can't help being me.
Harriet Harman has been made Secretary of State for Social Security, but Mr Blair is giving her considerable intellectual underpinning. From Frank Field, appointed Social Security Minister outside the Cabinet. He's dreamt up radical shake-ups for the welfare state, including a 5p starting rate of income tax offset by higher national insurance contributions. Donald Dewar becomes Scottish Secretary to pilot the devolution measure through the Commons. The man who'd expected that job, George Robertson, becomes Defence Secretary, a promotion of sorts and recognition that at least some of the difficulties he got into over devolution in the last few months were not of his own making.
I've left behind, I believe, a very firm foundation for the creation of a devolved Scottish Parliament, and I'm very happy, therefore, to move on to such a large and new and exciting responsibility.
One of the biggest surprises was Frank Dobson's appointment as Health Secretary, where the Treasury may be expected to keep a tight rein on policy. Alistair Darling is Gordon Brown's number 2 at the Treasury, Anne Taylor, Leader of the Commons. Jack Cunningham is Agriculture Minister, Ron Davis goes to Wales, Gavin Strang to Transport, and David Clark becomes Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. The Education Secretary, David Blunkett, was amongst those settling into the office today.
The whole through boxes aren't really broad enough to take Braille, so that's a good start. We'll have to have a little briefcase instead.
Lord Richard, the new leader of the Lords, was last a minister in 1969, one of only 4 members of the Cabinet who can look back on even junior ministerial experience.
I think the principal difference that comes into my mind is that the last time I was made a minister I was awake, and I'm not sure I'm terribly awake at the moment.
Mr Blair is still at Buckingham Palace with his new ministers receiving the seals of office. In a very orthodox series of appointments, he's only had to disappoint 3 people entitled to cabinet jobs or promised them. But Michael Meacher, Tom Clark and Derek Foster have all accepted ministerial posts outside the cabinet.
Immediately after her appointment, the new Northern Ireland Secretary, Mo Mowlam, paid a flying visit to Belfast. She's expected to hold early talks with the parties there in an effort to restart the peace process. But she warned the IRA that the goals haven't shifted. Jane Bennett-Powell reports from Belfast.
The new Northern Ireland Secretary achieved one early success, leaving people in the centre of Belfast surprised but pleased by her walkabout. She was described as relaxed and down to earth. But it was also said she'd have her work cut out. And as a new round of talks on Northern Ireland's future starts in a month's time, whether Sinn Féin is included is a pressing question for the new government.
Our position still holds that a ceasefire is necessary and the ball is in the IRA's court.
Sinn Féin now have 2 MPs on a par with the DUP. If that's not enough to secure a place at talks, they say, nothing is.
She is representing a government in London which has an absolute majority. It has no problem whatsoever about doing whatever it wants to do.
But the new Ulster Unionist MP for Lagan Valley, Sir James Molyneux's old seat, says Dr Mowlam has appeared too ready to make concessions to Sinn Féin in the past.
We will be urging Dr Mowlam to continue to take a strong position with the IRA.
By her very public visit here, Dr Mowlam has ensured that the Labour government is seen to put Northern Ireland high on its list of priorities. But her every utterance is under scrutiny by all parties. Jane Bennett-Powell, Channel 4 News, Belfast.
Rebel troops in Zaire are reported to be just 95 miles from the capital, Kinshasa. Efforts by the United Nations to repatriate thousands of sick and dying Rwandan refugees are being hampered by heavy rain. Meanwhile, South African officials are still hopeful peace talks between Zaire's President Mobutu and rebel leader Laurent Kabila will go ahead. In the United States, a Californian car driver is in a critical condition after being shot at point-blank range by a highway patrolman. The motorist, suspected of speeding, had stopped when the policeman opened fire after the car appeared to try to run him over. After a short chase, the motorist was stopped, arrested on the ground and taken to hospital badly wounded in the chest. One of Britain's most outspoken right-wing journalists, Sir John Junor, has died at the age of 78. As editor of the Sunday Express for 32 years, he fiercely attacked anything he saw as liberal humbug. He was knighted by Margaret Thatcher in 1979. And Hughie Green, who introduced American-style game shows to British television, has died at the age of 77 from cancer. He started off with Double Your Money in the early days of ITV and reached his peak with the immensely popular Opportunity Knocks, which ran for more than 20 years, launching entertainers like Freddie Starr. And now look at the weather. And tonight it'll be a mild and cloudy night with outbreaks of rain. Tomorrow the northwest of Scotland will be dull and wet with strong winds. Elsewhere there'll be a mix of sunshine and showers, some of which will be heavy and thundery. The rain over Scotland will move southwards across most of England and Wales on Monday, and it will turn much colder with snow possible over the northern hills. And that's the news. Now back to A Week in Politics.
Good evening to a new era in politics. Tony Blair has fulfilled two huge ambitions. He's moved into number 10 as the youngest Prime Minister of the century, with the biggest majority of his party's history. Now comes the hard bit.
And no sooner have we disposed of one election than we're slap bang into another. It looks like there may be almost as many candidates standing for the Tory leadership as they have members of Parliament.
Enough of talking, said Tony Blair outside number 10. Time to do. That's one illustration of the world of difference between being in opposition and running the government. Opposition is about making friends and building alliances. Government means making choices, even if it means making enemies. Well, I'm joined in the studio by Peter Mandelson, Labour's campaign chief, as was who knows what in the appointments to come. Peter Mandelson first, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Now, honeymoon over, let's get on to real business.
I didn't think it would take long.
To govern is to choose, and Tony Blair has chosen his first cabinet. He campaigned as New Labour, but this cabinet strikes many people, I think, as rather old Labour. Frank Dobson at Health, Claire Short, who you hid throughout the campaign, in the cabinet. It's going to look rather old Labour, isn't it?
No member of the cabinet was hid during the campaign, but I don't think it's true to say that people will see it as old Labour or New Labour. The fact is that the manifesto that they're implementing is absolutely New Labour, and I think it's very important for people to understand this. I mean, we took quite a chance in publishing our early manifesto over a year ago. We did so because we wanted to put before the electorate fully baked policies which had gone to our party membership, and you'll recall that they were overwhelmingly backed in a ballot of all our party members, and the manifesto that was agreed, on which we have fought, will now be implemented by all the cabinet.
Yes, but let's see whether their heart is really in implementing it, because it does look to people, I'm sure it's going to look to people, as though Tony Blair, in terms of modernisers, is going to be a minority within his own cabinet. Many of these people were not fully signed up to his project from the beginning, and you're not telling me he regards them as the best talent available in the parliamentary Labour Party.
Andrew, it's a very interesting line for you to peddle, but it is not supported by any evidence whatsoever. The members of the new cabinet were absolutely instrumental in formulating the manifesto on which we fought the election. It was backed then by all our party membership. We took it to the electorate. They have confidence in the policies that they've
but that's
formulated,
all talk of opposition.
and what Tony Blair has is full confidence in the team
with respect,
to implement the policies.
Still thinking...
So you can peddle a line, but you actually have no evidence to suggest that they are any more or less committed to the policies than any number of people who could care to mention.
With respect, I think you're still talking opposition. Thinking of government, it's striking that many of the big spending departments are now in the hands of people associated with the left of the party. There's going to be a built-in tension there, isn't there, between them and the Chancellor?
I think you're thinking about the old Labour Party. You're thinking about old divisions, old differences. We fought this election on one thoroughly new Labour programme and manifesto. I think it's very important that Tony Blair today should have demonstrated his confidence in the team that helped draw up that manifesto by putting them now in the position to implement it, and they will do it very thoroughly. And what is implemented will be that new Labour manifesto, nothing more or nothing less.
All right, that was the message to the Cabinet. Now let's move on to choices you have to make in Europe. The truth is, isn't it, when you get to the Amsterdam summit, Tony Blair is going to have to make a choice. You all are. Do you want to stay friends with people like Roy Jenkins, or do you want to stay friends with Rupert Murdoch? Which is it going to be?
We genuinely want to do what is best for Britain. We want to help create a Europe on Britain's terms. And I think there's a very important point to be made here following the general election. In this election campaign, we saw Europe taking more centre stage than ever before. I think that was important. I think it was actually useful development. It's useful that the public are able to express a view, to assert their view in relation to Europe, because I think in the past the public have felt that they have been rather taken for granted by the politicians.
All right, but let's move on the choice you've got to make. Now, the choice is this. You came into power with this wide coalition of support, everybody from the pro-European Guardian to the hostile to Europe and everything about it Sun. Now, you're not going to be able to please both of them in government. Who are you going to choose to please?
I don't think we were going to be choosing between the Guardian newspaper and Rupert Murdoch, heaven forfend. We're going to be
you're going to fall out with Rupert Murdoch?
No, we're not going to be falling out with Rupert Murdoch on this issue or any other necessarily. What we will be doing, Andrew, is implementing our policy for Europe and pursue what Tony Blair set out as the goals for the Amsterdam summit. I don't think that there is any great appetite either in this country or across the European Union for any great integrationist steps forward. I think that became quite clear during the course of the campaign. What we've got to do now, though, is to set out a new agenda for Europe. European reform.
And briefly, does that suggest a more pro-European tone?
What it suggests is a Europe that meets the needs of its citizens and putting priorities for employment and economic development and other areas where useful cooperation can take place between member states without taking any giant integrationist steps forward.
Right. Another area of this extraordinary Labour coalition that was built up in opposition was having the support of both trade unionists and some business people. That coalition, can that survive the negotiations about a minimum wage? And specifically, the commission that will set that minimum wage, will it have been set up by the time the TUC meets in September?
Well, I can't say that because I'm not in charge of the Queen's speech or the immediate legislative programme. But I think it is an early commitment that the new Prime Minister and Cabinet would like to see in place. I can't give you a timetable for its implementation, but one thing I can assure you of is this, that the Low Pay Commission, when it is set up, those people who make a recommendation to the government on what the national minimum wage rate should be, will be doing so in the context of the national economy and what it is appropriate to recommend and what it is appropriate for the government to agree. Not what the TUC or this, that or the other interest group demands. We'll listen to everyone, of course, but what will be done will be in the national interest and it will be decided only by the Cabinet.
Peter Mandelson, thank you very much.
Whoever takes over as leader of the Tory party might have a tricky job on their hands, filling all those shadow ministerial positions. First, of course, there are shadows for the Welsh and Scottish office to be found without a Tory MP for either country in Parliament. But the problems don't end there. The outgoing Labour front bench team was 99 strong. Now, with only 165 MPs to choose from, the new Tory leader will have to trim that number radically or be forced to offer front bench jobs to distinguished but hardly compliant backbenchers. Still, I'm sure that Ted Heath and Theresa Gorman are eagerly awaiting the call. More tricky decisions after this short break. Welcome back. The Liberal Democrats' 46 seats was their best result since the days of Lloyd George, and if the voters back proportional representation in Mr Blair's promised referendum, Paddy can expect plenty more, which may reinforce Tony's doubts about changing the system. If Thursday's election had been run under a proportional system, the Electoral Reform Society tell us that Labour, on its 44% share of the vote, would have no majority. Their 419 seats would shrink to 286, nor would the Tories have been so humiliated. Their 31% share, instead of a paltry 165, would have won them 199 MPs, and they would have been still a national party represented in Scotland and Wales. Paddy Ashdown and the smaller parties would hold the balance of power. The Liberal Democrats' 17% share would have more than doubled their 46 wins, making them major players with 109 seats. I'm joined now by Campbell, prominent Liberal Democrat Member of Parliament, returned back. Congratulations on the results you got so far, Mingus.
Thank you very much.
But won't Labour's landslide weaken Tony Blair's resolve to hold a referendum about electoral reform?
Well, as I said last week on your programme to Jack Straw, we entered into the commitment with the Labour Party on the basis of good faith. We expect them to honour the obligation and the commitment which they made, and if they didn't, they'd be guilty of a very substantial breach of that faith. No, I believe Tony Blair will honour the commitment which he entered into.
Well, an accomplished lawyer such as yourself, Mingus, could find 20 ways of honouring the commitment while using slightly more devious words, and with a 179 majority, Tony Blair can do exactly what he likes.
Yes, but Mr. Blair has talked about trust in politics, and it would obviously be a very substantial breach of trust if he were to find some semantic way of getting out of an obligation freely entered into, and an obligation which, of course, you will remember was the result of extensive negotiation between Robin Cook, who carries an important part in the government, and Robert McLennan of the Liberal Democrats. No, I expect Mr. Blair to honour his commitment.
Well, now, what would your attitude be if Tony Blair agreed, fulfilled his promise, set up the referendum, and then campaigned against it?
Well, Mr. Blair has always said that he's not persuaded of the case for proportional representation. I've always said that I think we can persuade him of that case. And of course, as I've already said, people like Robin Cook are pretty firmly committed to the idea that a proportional system would be a much fairer way of operating within our constitution and would be likely to provide adequate representation for all strands of political thought, rather as you demonstrated in your analysis of the position which we now find ourselves in after the election on Thursday, when the first past the post system has meant that the Conservative Party, in spite of having 17 or 18% of the vote here in Scotland, simply are not represented in Parliament by any Conservative MP.
Now, you had hoped, it was said lots of times by Liberal Democrats, that perhaps the Tony Blair government would be a government of all the talents, that he would look outside the narrow confines of the Labour Party. Well, he has. I mean, he's talking about Sir David Simon, the chairman of BP, rather than, say, any Liberal Democrats, your colleagues. Are you disappointed in that?
Well, I think it was pretty clear as the size of the majority became in turn clear that Mr. Blair was not going to have to come to the Liberal Democrats and seek any kind of support. As you know, both in public and private, I've always been pretty sceptical of the idea of cabinet seats for Liberal Democrats in the event that Mr. Blair were returned to power, and the events of the last 24 hours or so have only served to confirm the correctness of that judgment.
Now, how are you going to behave in opposition? Because it's a fascinating point. Here's the Queen's speech coming up, and there'll be the reform of the NHS, an internal market, an education bill, a crime bill, and legislation for Scotch and Welsh devolution. Are you going to cherry-pick amongst it, or are you going to vote for or against the Queen's speech?
Well, we'll have to see the precise terms and contents of the Queen's speech, but if it contains measures which are in the best interests of the people of the United Kingdom, then we're certainly not going to vote against it. One thing we will be anxious to do, and Paddy Ashton's already made that clear, if Mr. Blair and his colleagues are serious about education and health, then the sort of financial proposals which they made in the course of the general election campaign are simply not going to be adequate in order to bring about the changes, the improvements in these two great public services. So you can be certain that we will continue to press the case, as we did in the election campaign, for a much higher degree of investment and, if necessary, for the use of taxation for that purpose.
You'll sit on the opposition benches?
Indeed, there'd be nowhere else for us to go, because I think, as you pointed out, there will be an overflow onto the opposition benches from the government benches anyway.
Campbell, thank you very much indeed. Aren't our politicians all wonderful sports? Didn't you admire the stoic calm with which the losers took it on the chin when things went badly? There they stood on Thursday, rows and rows of them, forced smiles, gritted teeth, and all of them to a candidate longing to repeat the immortal words, "The people have spoken, the bastards." Here's Andrea.
There is nothing so ex as an ex-MP. Scores of former Conservative members of Parliament, among them no less than 7 ex-cabinet ministers, can now get acquainted with the job seekers allowance. And they'll have plenty of leisure time to reflect on things they wish they'd never said. Just 2 months ago, Michael Portillo had this fit of pre-election bravura.
There is time before the general election for people to wake up to what a Labour government would mean. It would mean the destruction of jobs, and it would mean the elimination of orders that are essential for the defence and security of this country and the deterrent of threats to this country.
Alas for Mr. Portillo, the voters decided that the scariest threat to the country was him. Europhobia left him a loser at the ballot box, as it did his cabinet colleague, Michael Forsyth. Less than 8 weeks ago, he was arrogantly telling an opposition MP this.
The honourable gentleman also sits for the party which would do most to fragment our country into regions. In a Europe of the regions, they are committed to a European superstate, and when the election comes, they will be sent packing because of their responsibilities for such irresponsible policies.
Who's packing now, Michael? Tories also have time to regret the way they fought their campaign. Issues they thought were surefire election winners exploded in their faces. Tony Newton was certain that pensions was a vote swinger.
To be perfectly honest, I'm slightly surprised that the opposition were thinking of asking for a debate on pensions, because it's increasingly clear that they have no policy of their own whatever on pensions. It is also clear that they don't understand our policies and therefore misstate what that policy is.
The voters of Braintree were in no doubt about their policy to send Tony Newton into retirement. Iain Lang thought he was onto a winner with the Constitution. Oh dear.
Nothing could be more damaging to the prospects of maintaining our economic success than the kind of internal constitutional upheaval that would flow from the proposals of the Labour Party, the Liberal Party and the two nationalist parties.
Never mind upheaval, it was an earthquake underneath the feet of Mr. Lang and every other Tory MP in Scotland. Some Tory ministers were so confident of perpetual rule that they even started giving us lessons in the art of government. I wonder if William Waldegrave remembers saying this.
Much of government activity is much more like negotiation, much more like playing poker than it is like playing chess. You do not put all the cards up all the time. If you're in the interest of the country, you cannot.
Well, now Mr. Waldegrave is going to have plenty of time to brush up his poker, chess, tiddlywinks, snakes and ladders. He's got so much time on his hands, he could build a matchstick model of the House of Commons. Twice. Perhaps no one will regret complacent words more than John Major. Even when Labour had romped home in the Wirral South by-election, Mr. Major was so confident of his prospects that he welcomed the new Labour MP with these rather ungracious words.
Let me congratulate the new honourable member for Wirral on his success. I warmly congratulate him on his success, Madam Speaker, but I would advise him not to unpack his bags.
Oh dear, it's poor Mr. Major who's had to go out and buy luggage. At any election, even a landslide like this one, the vast majority of seats don't swap allegiance. Of the 659 constituencies in this election, only 184 changed their party colours on Thursday night. But even in the safest of seats, democracy still brings its own mini-dramas. Wiltshire North, a safe Tory seat, centres around Chippenham. For the past 3 months, we've been testing the political temperature in Downing Street, Chippenham. And in the last episode of our political soap, Downing Street goes to the polls.
Hello,
Oh
Mrs.
dear.
Young. Maybe a number, thanks. 681.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Well, I still vote at Conservative. You can't change me.
I vote Conservative. I think that was fairly well known.
Yeah.
That was my main cause. I don't know what Phil's done. I haven't a clue what she's done.
Are you
So-
gonna, no. You're going to keep it private? No, at the end of the day, I went Conservative.
Right, Brent. Things to vote then.
Yeah.
Who'd you go for?
I went Lib Dem.
Did you? Thought you might.
Have you made your mind up?
No. I'll tell you when I come out.
Well, I'm voting Liberal Democrat because they actually match what I particularly believe in. What about you two? You decided?
I'm gonna vote Labour because I think we need a new start.
I did it.
And I believe in Tony Blair, really.
What did you do?
I did it.
Yeah,
I voted.
Yeah. How do you go?
I can tell you.
Lib Dem.
Hey! Another vote for that Lesh Paddy.
That's the
Yeah.
reason you voted for him.
Yeah, he is. Because he's Lesh. He is. Well, that's what. So that's why I voted for him. No other reason. Yeah, and that's mine. No political reason at all. Just that I like that man.
That's your prerogative, Karen.
Yeah, so that's why I
Well
voted for. I feel quite proud of myself, actually.
Well, I'm going to be voting Labour.
Are you? Yeah, but you've said that all along, haven't you?
I have, yeah.
We don't stick on the
Tony.
fence like some other person, Kevin.
So come on, Kevin.
Come on, Kevin.
Come on, what
Get
are
off
you
the
doing?
fence.
Come on.
I'm voting
Go for it, Kev.
Lib Dem.
Yay!
I voted Labour in both local and parliamentary elections.
I voted Lib Dem in the national elections, but my conscience was eased because I could vote Labour in the local elections.
Review the last weeks and the last months to analyse the figures, but I think we really want to wait until we have the hard figures.
I voted Lib Dem.
No, or one.
Whatever. I went in there and there was 2 forms and I got really confused. So the yellow one had 3 names. I'd never heard of anyone. So I went, Ip, Dip, Bird.
I'm more or less resigned to the fact that tomorrow morning I shall wake up under a Labour government.
If this is the last day of a Conservative government, I'm glad I am the age I am, because I can see in another 10 years' time that this won't be a united kingdom. It'll be separated and it'll be a federal Europe.
GWR FM.
It's 8 o'clock on Friday, the 2nd of May 1997, and Britain has a new Prime Minister.
A new dawn has broken, has it not?
It might be a lovely day outside, but it's not a new day for Britain.
In a moment, the Tory leadership race. Again, for the 4th time in 8 years, the Conservative Party is to have a contest. We'll hear from tense but dignified Simon Heffer and Iain Duncan Smith, and the sad but not suicidal Geoffrey Archer and John Barnes. That's after this short break. As Labour learnt in the 1980s. With Mr Major now out of the running, the battle for the leadership is also a battle for the direction of the party, and one which has 4 questions at its core. Firstly, what went wrong?
The big picture, as the explanation of this defeat, will not be found in the campaign. It'll be found much deeper in the events of the past few years and how we have conducted ourselves and how Labour have conducted themselves.
I think it's very important that the Conservative Party should learn the right lessons from the campaign that's just finished. I think the central lesson is that a party that seeks to distance itself from its European partners and to adopt an attitude of hostility and intemperate nationalism is least likely to recommand the support of the electorate.
Next, as they choose their leader, Tories must ask, what sort of person do we need? So far, only Ken Clarke has thrown his hush puppies into the ring.
One of the engaging features about Ken is that if you ask Ken a question, a straight question, are you going to stand for the leadership, he'll say yes or no, and he won't actually kind of go halfway round the houses. I mean, I have seen interviews with other possible potential candidates which have gone on for 10 minutes without the candidate actually answering the question.
The primary question for the Conservative Party after an event like this general election is to clear its collective mind on the ideas, the values, the principles for which it is going to fight. And that is what we should be addressing our mind to, not the question, the essentially secondary question of who holds which office on the front bench.
I suspect there'll probably be half a dozen contenders, and already Ken Clarke has announced, and there'll be others. I suspect that William Hague will announce. The candidates pretty much are self-evident.
It must be a Eurosceptic, somebody like John Redwood or Michael Howard, who has a clearly defined view on the nation state. It can't, I'm afraid, be Mr Clarke because of his views on Europe.
The third question is harder still. How should we behave in opposition?
Much depends upon the way in which this election is handled and the way the party behaves after the election as to whether indeed the opposition is going to be an effective opposition in this Parliament.
Finally, the most painful question of all. With such a huge Labour majority, is there any way we can avoid another rout in 2002?
It's obviously going to be an enormous challenge, an enormous mountain to climb, but I think that we can do that. And I think that there is an opportunity in opposition which we haven't had for the last 18 years, and that opportunity is to look at our policies, to look at them, examine them, and to produce new ones.
And joining Andrew and myself are 3 Conservative supporters and 1 Tory commentator, to whom I turn first. Simon Heffer, the only good thing about this election was John Major. He tried to hold together a party and he was pulled down by a rabble.
No, as one of your interviewees just said there, this went wrong more than 5 years ago, and it went wrong because of the way John Major ran the party. It went wrong because...
What do you mean, ran?
Well, it went wrong because he went into the exchange rate mechanism. When Mrs. Thatcher was virtually dead in the water, he and Douglas Hurd persuaded her to go into the exchange rate mechanism. They bucked the markets. We had interest rates at a level that was not demanded by the demand for money, and as a result, businesses closed down, people lost their jobs, negative equity stalked the land. These were Conservative supporters. It was a decision made wrongly by John Major. He didn't have the guts to get out in time. He should have seen the way the wind was blowing 18 months before Black Wednesday. That's what went wrong.
John Major's fault, Geoffrey Archer.
Well, I agree with what you said. He had a brilliant campaign, John Major. The one thing everybody agreed at the end of it.
Pity about the party. Great leader, pity about the party.
He had fought a great campaign. You asked me
you
about
don't
the
answer questions.
No, you asked. No, I do. You throw in another question in your usual rude, insolent way, hurled in another question. Having asked the question about John Major, I got 2 sentences out. You hurled in the party.
Well,
you saw that, Andrew. He's a...
I'm not getting it. Answer the question.
Answer the question. He's a good man pulled down by a rabble. That's what I put to him. But you agree with that?
We were a divided party. The thing I found on the streets that they could not tolerate was our divisions. And the second thing that did us was 18 years. And the combination of 18 years and being bored out of their minds with us and a party divided, the one thing we learnt is we cannot go into another general election divided. Whoever becomes our leader, we have to get behind them 100%, or we will lose again and again.
Yes, notice that finger, which goes straight past me to you. You're the divided. You're the person, Iain Duncan Smith. It's you on the right of the party who are the main culprits here. Your disloyalty during the campaign, or those of your kith and kin, and the obsession with a single European currency, split the party and brought you down.
Well, it'd be nice if it was as simple as that, because then we could all just patch it up and go in and win the next election. The reality is it's not like that. The truth happened about September 1992, whichever way you look at it. You talk to the pollsters, the commentators, when we crashed out of the ERM. This is not about recrimination, let's be honest. The fact is we ought to just recognise that the... Hold on a second, Vincent. Exactly the point. Actually, the thing that we realise now is throughout the whole of the campaign, the polls didn't budge an iota. And they haven't budged an iota in reality for the better part of 4.5 years. And what we recognise is that public said to us, very close margin in 92, they said, we'll give you another chance. But then we had to break a lot of promises and pledges because of what happened, taxes rose. And the truth that we now must realise is we get behind whoever is elected, and we get policies we work on over the next year, and we have something the public can grab hold of again.
That's one thing. It's all right, very well saying that nothing could have been done. That didn't prevent over 250 Conservative MPs signing in their manifesto notices of disloyalty to their leader.
Well, we say that, but the Prime Minister, I thought, handled that pretty well. And I actually believe the reality is that, no, hold on, the fact is going to be, quite simply, that Britain is not entering into a single currency. The Conservatives have driven us into that position. The public are in line with that. So who's actually out of step? Perhaps the Labour Party.
So, John Barnes, this was inevitable. Nothing that could have been done during the campaign. It was all in the runes 4.5 years ago.
I'm inclined to agree with that. I think the mistake the Conservative Party did was to win the last general election. I think they were left with a public expenditure problem. They'd lost control of public expenditure, either deliberately or accidentally, just before the last general election. They were going to face a huge time for a change. The one thing I think that John Major might have done, could have done, which would have minimised the defeat, was to stack Norman Lamont on the morrow of coming out of the ERM. You needed some cathartic action at that point, and it wasn't taken.
All right, now let's move on to the future and explore what kind of party the Conservatives should be in opposition. This obviously revolves around the European question, Simon Heffer. It looks like, though, there's no electoral mileage in the sort of Europhobia you like, Eurosceptics, those who'd said they'd never sign up to a single currency. They did no better with the voters than pro-European Tories. The referendum party were humiliated. Sir James Goldsmith lost his deposit. The electorate made a thumping judgment about the Conservatives, and they said, we don't like an anti-European party. They voted for pro-European parties.
Or you can say they made a judgment that we don't trust you anymore on Europe than the Labour Party.
All right, they trust the Labour because more pro-European, and the Liberal Democrats are even more pro-European.
No, a point that I made during the campaign in one of my columns was that when John Major got up and said you can trust the Tories on Europe, I said, look at his record on Europe. He signed the Maastricht Treaty. He took us into ERM. He crashed us out of ERM. He doesn't understand how the European thing is working. Now, there were probably about 2 million Conservatives who abstained. There were many more abstentions than last time. And the Referendum Party and the UK Independence Party got almost 1 million votes between them. Now, you add those 3 million votes onto the Conservative vote, and they probably won the next election.
Exactly.
That's the difference. I think that you're wrong to say that there wasn't mileage in the anti-European thing. And if...
No, You add the referendum party to your vote, and you've got about a third of the electorate voting for those parties, and 2/3 voting for pro-European parties.
No, that isn't how it works at all. The point is, if the Conservative Party do elect someone like Kenneth Clarke as its next leader, and if Kenneth Clarke doesn't revise his enthusiasm for a single currency, they will not unite, and they will not win the next election. They may not even be a single party at the next election.
Let's move over to Geoffrey Archer, and leaving aside for the question at the moment, who is going to be in the benighted position of being Tory leader of the opposition with less than 150 MPs behind them, how should the Conservatives conduct themselves in opposition? Should they oppose everything Labour does, try and be a destructive opposition, oppose things like Scottish devolution, even though the Scottish people have given an overwhelming mandate for that?
We should oppose when we believe that they're doing the wrong thing. Where they're doing the wrong thing.
Then you would oppose everything?
No, we won't. That would be totally
irresponsible. What will you accept that was in the Labour manifesto, then?
Just a moment, before you go on to that.
No, answer that, guy.
Yes, I will. I won't avoid that. I won't avoid that. I want to pick up something Simon said and take it one further, because you don't seem to realise that at the last election, John Major got more votes than this Prime Minister got this election.
All right, that's the quirk of the electoral system which has served you well in the past.
Wait a moment. Allow a person to get the point made. We were also down 10% on this election, and it is quite possible for us to fight back with that 10% back. There's also 108 seats, which I would call frothy. They're 2,000 or less. We will come back, Andrew.
All right. I want to ask John Barnes how quickly you think the Conservatives can come back. You've got no MPs in Scotland and Wales, hardly any local councillors. The average age of your activists is 64. The party did worse in marginal seats, and Central Office looked like a two-bit operation compared with Millbank Towers. Now, how can you rebuild? Can it be rebuilt? The party machine. How do you start that,
The party machine has been rebuilt several times this century following defeats. That's not difficult.
How do you start doing it?
You start by finding a new party chairman. You start by actually thinking about policy, a major policy exercise. You try to stop quarrelling. The one thing that can actually bugger your recovery is quarrelling. But if you actually get united, the Labour Party is going to make huge mistakes on public expenditure because their backbenchers are going to be out of control. And you can come back within 5 years. Yeah. In fact, if you look at what happened after 45, back in really to
pretty well
snatching distance.
I want to go over to Iain Duncan Smith, because at the moment you've got no shadow Defence Secretary, no shadow Foreign Secretary. Your front bench is very depleted. And, I mean, there's going to be a steamroller Labour majority. Maybe it's best to sort of stay quiet for 3 years and hope a Labour government makes mistakes and gets unpopular. Is that the way to operate in Parliament?
No, I think the party's got to learn something now and learn it fast. We're not in government, we're in opposition. And in opposition, you don't have to make the decisions, they do. And that's what served the Labour Party very well. So what I would want them to do is very quickly say, for the next year, let's behave like an opposition. We should hunt the Labour Party. We should harry them and chase them and defy them. Make policy over the next year and a half, fix the party machine, get our activists more active, and they will be now. They're in opposition, they're frightened, they'll come out, they'll knock on doors, they'll collect money, and then we can step forward and say, this is what we present to you, the electorate, which is the alternative. No need to have factional fighting. It's not necessary.
The one thing you need more than anything else, Simon Heffer, is a Conservative equivalent to Tony Blair. Now, in the absence of Michael Heseltine, and we're very sad to hear about his condition, and Michael Portillo, who is the Tony Blair who can do to the Conservative Party what Tony Blair did to the Labour Party? Who is that person?
I think actually we need Peter Mandelson. I want Tony Blair. No, I mean, I think Tony Blair's a very impressive man, but Peter Mandelson's genius was the genius that underpinned the revival of the Labour Party.
So,
I don't know.
So leaders mean nothing. You just need a puppet to pull the strings.
No, but you need someone to give the leader the right message and the right attitude. That's how Labour won. I don't know. I think
idea.
I think you should get Maurice Sartre on this programme and ask him, because he's probably someone working for him at the moment who could do it.
Right. Now, Geoffrey Archer, the problem is if you pick someone like who is a faction of the party behind them, somebody like John Redwood, it could end up like the Michael Foot position of 1983. So, what do you think they ought to do?
Well, I think I agree with Iain totally. The Commons will settle who they wish to be leader, and I think it's probably one of 6 people. Whoever it is, if the whole party doesn't get behind that person, we're out. It will be Michael Foot. We must get behind them. Now, obviously, we will have...
Geoffrey, you can't always... Sorry to interrupt. I don't mean to interrupt you in this sense, but that's exactly what they said about Michael Foot when they elected him. We must all get behind the leader. If the leader is a factional one, it doesn't matter how many times you say it, as in the case of John Major, they won't get behind them.
No,
so who's the person who can unite the party?
The Labour Party was sentimental. When they chose Michael Foot. He was never born to lead anything. Right. They should have chosen Healy at the time. and having failed to choose Healey, they got beaten. We won't make the same mistake.
Well, watch me wipe the smile off Iain Duncan's face as soon as he puts it on for me, which is that Teddy Taylor has just publicly called for you to be the next leader of the Labour Party. And the second point is Peter Lilly.
He's a very wise man.
Didn't wipe the smile off his face. Did you notice it? Yes, well. Now, the other point, I better just make this point that you are Scottish and therefore available for other duties. The other point I want to make to you is that Peter Lilly is going to declare in the Mail on Sunday tomorrow his candidacy. Now, who can unite the party?
Well, I think we're spoilt for choice. That's the honest truth. And I disagree with you, as you're no doubt going to expect this, because I don't think there are factional candidates out there. I generally don't. If the party was to choose any one of the candidates out there, then there is only one issue on which we have had difficulties, and that is the European issue. Everything else, from reduction of tax, all the public expenditure points,
given a choice between
two
candidates who will undoubtedly declare, say William Hague and Stephen Dorrell.
Oh, my instinct at the moment between William Hague and Stephen Dorrell.
Yes.
You've thrown two new names at me. Now, neither of those have actually declared yet.
It's called a googly out of the back of the hand there.
I've just padded this off and said I'll wait and see if they actually come out for it.
Are you a candidate?
I'm not a candidate.
Will you be a
you've got it
candidate?
down on your list there.
No, will you be a
I've no
candidate?
intention of being a candidate,
That's
but of course
good.
if you want to
Just
press me.
clear to get... Oh, well, sorry, I don't have the power. John Barnes, in an ideal world, you'd like Ken Clarke to be leader.
I think he's the best parliamentarian. I think he's the one man who knows about opposition, having been there. I think, though, he would probably be too divisive for the right.
Factional party. Jeffrey says if whoever's elected, he stands up and says at the chicken dinners, we all must get behind the new leader. The Labour Party fear.
Yes.
The one thing you'd say about Kenneth Clarke is the Labour Party fear him.
We did make that mistake in the 60s. We should have got behind Ian MacLeod, not Ted Heath. The Labour Party feared MacLeod. The Labour Party feared Clarke. I will get behind Clarke, but I think the party will pick William Hague.
I will get behind whoever the party chooses. I am a team player. If we're going to go into another faction, Blair can stay there for 20 years if we do that, and it'll be our own fault. If we go into the next election divided, that's us.
Right, well, whoever the Conservatives choose to lead them next, he or possibly she is going to have a mammoth job ahead of them. Geoffrey Archer, looking forward to the election in 2002, is there any hope of overturning a majority of 179? Especially when it's held by such a disciplined Prime Minister as Tony Blair.
Well, you've got two things there. Once in 1945, when there was a majority of 191, we got right down to 6 in one go.
And it went down to 6.
We got right down to 6 in one go, and then we're very quickly back. It's the second time in history. It would be the third time in history that we've done it. I don't pretend it's going to be easy. You say he's disciplined now. I think, funnily enough, the large number he's got on the back benches will make it impossible for him not to have hundreds of people appearing on shows like this one. And you two can't wait to find which of those Labour MPs will come on and say, I think Tony Blair's a load of rubbish, and the sooner you get rid of him, the better. And as for Dobson in health, I can't believe it was even appointed. You two will be sitting up, going through the list, going, he's no good. He'll just back the leader. He's no good. But you'll find the ones within 2 or 3 weeks, and we'll sit and watch this programme and enjoy the Labour Party being talked about the way you used to tear us about.
You find a straw of comfort amidst your desolation, but let's stick with the future for the Conservatives. Simon Heffer, those on the anti-European right, the Conservative Party, had a plan, didn't they? Labour would win the election by a small majority, you'd purge out the pro-Europeans, you'd get rid of Kenneth Clarke, Labour would cock it up a bit, and you'd be back in office in 2002 with Michael Portillo as Prime Minister. Well, Michael Portillo's lost his seat, and Tony Blair's got a majority of 179. It's been one of the worst blunders in political history, hasn't it, that plan? It's gone completely wrong.
Well, I don't think there ever was a plan. I mean, certainly...
that was the idea, though,
Well,
wasn't
no,
it?
I mean, certainly a lot of us were aware 5 years ago that this election wasn't going to be won, and it was probably going to be lost quite heavily. I mean, I was stunned it was lost as heavily as it was. Also, you know, I never advocated Mr. Portillo's leadership, so it didn't really...
Well, you predicted a Labour majority, what?
50.
20-50. You didn't predict
25-50, no, that's what I
179,
said. Certainly not that big. But it's quite possible to come back from this. As Geoffrey says, there's probably 100 frothy seats, as he puts it.
OK, that leaves him with a majority of what? 79. He's still in office.
No, we're only fighting 79. Try and listen to what's said to you, Andrew. He's only fighting 79 if the 100 seats go.
He's got the figures upside down there, sorry.
In just the same way that the Conservative Party has been reduced now, what goes up must come down. It can happen. There's no way that if there was an election in 5 years' time, even on the same basis there was this week, that the result would be the same. There'll be a new leader of the party, and there will be new policies. The one thing that could swine this up, of course, is if they insist on not having a position on the single currency, because there'll be a referendum on that, probably within the next 3 or 4 years, and that's when the Conservative Party will have to have a definite position.
Let me go over to Iain Duncan Smith. I mean, Tony Blair created New Labour and made a lot of changes to his party in just 3.5 years, so maybe it is possible. But what does new conservatism amount to? What sort of platform is that? Where are the new policies?
Well, actually, new conservatism is conservatism. It's getting back to...
No, it's old conservatism.
No, I mean, the fact about the Conservatives that keeps getting them back is that they find the policies that are in touch with the ordinary people. And I say this quite simply.
Right, so you were out of touch this election. What are you going to junk of your old policies to get back in touch with the people?
It's very simple. We've got to look back at the things where we became arrogant, where we lost touch. There was an element of dismissing comments, dismissing concerns and complaints. The family, for example, we have overtaxed the family. There's no question. We've got to understand that that's our basis unit. We go back to that. And I honestly want to come back to the point that you made earlier on about there being factional pro and anti-Europeans. I feel very strongly that this is absolute rubbish. It's really very... No, it really is. I have talked to endless people who are great friends in this party, Quentin Davis and others, who we're told hold absolutely polarised beliefs on Europe with me. But when I sit down and discuss it with them, what we find automatically is that we want to try and find a way forward on this because there are other things that unite us, and that's the key for the Conservative Party, and we'll do it.
I want to go across to John Barnes for historical perspective, because after the last great defeat in 1906, Conservatives didn't govern by themselves for something like another 20 years. Is it possible that the Conservative Party could be in the wilderness for that long?
If they quarrel about Europe, yes. But you must remember that the big majority of 1906 wasn't there. That had disintegrated by 1910. Baldwin's big majority of 1924 had disintegrated by 1929. Attlee's big majority of 45 disintegrated by 1950. It's not inevitable, so long as you do not actually spend the whole of the 5 years in an internecine quarrel. If you do that, you'll be damned.
So you hope they take the advice John Major often gave them and they never listened to?
I think you've got to pick a good parliamentarian, a good broadcaster, a good TV caster, and you've got to stop quarrelling. Okay. It's the quarrelling that lost this election.
And get some good policies. I must stop you all there. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you from me too. And that's about it from this seismic week in politics, in which Labour and Tory politicians are just starting to get used to saying and doing unfamiliar things.
Tories have to learn how to say, taxi, taxi.
Labour MPs will have to get out of the habit of saying, it's all the government's fault.
Tory backbenchers will have to unlearn asking sycophantic questions of the Prime Minister.
Labour ministers will have to learn how not to answer questions at all.
Lucky old Liberal Democrats, their MPs now need a coach instead of a couple of taxis, and they can carry on blaming everyone. So can we. From Vincent and me and all of us here, a very good evening.